but same time, let me see whether I can share my screen already. I'll know whether I'm to go back on it again. Okay. Yeah, so while we're waiting for the others, let's confirm if you can see my screen so that I won't waste time looking for trying to share screen. Please confirm if you can see my screen.
Yeah, I can see your screen.
All right, that's fine. So let's wait for the others. Give it 2 minutes while I look for a good sitting position. Okay. All right. Let's see. Once it's 10:05, we'll start. All right. All right, it's 10:05. So let's just kickstart. A lot of people are enjoying the Easter holidays. So yeah, today's class will be talking about documenting, analyzing, and presenting feedback to stakeholders. Now, this class is going to be a little bit different. I don't think I'll be able to show you some of the examples, or we can check online for some of the examples. But most importantly, this class is more of a practical scenario. So stakeholders differ a lot, and your stakeholder can be your client that wants a project, and most times your stakeholders could be your target audience. So we're doing due to popular demand. I mean, there are times Instagram has released a feature, but because of the maybe influx of negative reactions, they take down that feature. So that kind of power is what you call stakeholders' strengths. So because they are the target audience and they are the ones using your products, so they have a decision to make. So stakeholders differ, and that's why there's no really like a perfect way, but there are some standards that should be involved in documenting your products, and there are reasons why some of these standards need to be taken. So that's what we'll be talking about mostly just UX documentation in a nutshell, but we'll be talking about, so you can always raise your questions. So it will be more like I want it to be an interactive section. So if you have questions, you write it down so that as I'm going further, I review your questions based on what I'm explaining. So you need to take note of what I'm explaining because things like this can happen in like real life scenarios. There's no like examples. Some things might come up. If I remember different scenarios, I'll explain how to handle this sort of scenarios. Okay. Confirm if you guys can still hear me. Let not be as if I'm not audible enough. Okay, nice one. So let's be on our way now. So UX documentation, yeah, so it's a working document of a product journey from inception to current release. So whatever you've done needs to be documented, and there are reasons for it. Organizational memory serves as a historic reference for user experience, design decisions, workflows, research, and other processes. So you include what was worked and what hasn't. So, like I said, when you're working on a product, it might take several turns, decisions might be made. But due to the fact that sometimes you can make a decision and after maybe like 3 cycles, you might go back to an old one. So for this not to happen, I think one happened yesterday. So we were building a product, it's a dashboard, and we said we didn't want to tie customer document upload with the onboarding flow. Reason being that, I mean, with the validation flow. So when customers come in, we validate them to be verified or not verified. So we didn't want them to upload documents while they are doing that in real time, because reasons being that at that point in time, he might not have the documents, and we do not want him to stop the journey. We want him to conclude. So we just need information that he can provide on the spot, and we validate those information without stopping the journey, and could still encourage the customer to come back. Then when we want documents, we will request for them, and he has a module where he can upload these documents at any time he wants. Now, that was the one we agreed upon, and we worked on one. Now we went to another iteration, and someone actually brought back that he needs to see. So because of that, when we are validating customer information, we can see a thread. So someone now asked that why is he not seeing the documents? That he wants to see all the documents. And we told him these were the reasons why. He now said no. Now, because he is a new member of the team, or why would I say a new stakeholder to the team, he didn't know that we've actually looked at this. So we drew out the outline and said, this was what, and this was why we did this thing. And this is why we are. So unless he has a better solution and idea, then he can suggest that to us. At that point in time, he had to step back, because what he was talking about, we've already worked on it, and we brought out the best way possible for now on how to handle it. So he was looking at it from a personal perspective, that as he needs to see all the validation, this thing, and all the stakeholders. He forgot that the screen we were building for was for the validators. So we wanted the validators to validate what the customer inputs. Now, why we did that now is because we don't want a validator to come in and see some people don't have documents and some people have documents. So we don't want that gap, that real time, because if it's like that, validator might believe that anyone without documents is not due for validation. So that might cause a stop or a show blocker within the system. So we didn't want that. And when we told him to look at this from the eye, because at that point in time, we are looking at it from the validator standpoint, he had to mellow down and agree with the current flow we have, pending when he can bring a better flow. Now, so that's an example of how UX organizational memory works. Sometimes you would have worked on something, and maybe a new member of the team is bringing back an information or something you've already done. You don't want to be going in circles, because if we didn't have records of us building the system and why we built the system like this, we would have done his own. Then maybe in a few months later, we will now say, oh, the validators are not validating inputs with documents. We should like reevaluate that. So that would have caused a major issue. So yeah, then UX documentation can prevent things from making the same mistakes and exploring avenues others have already tried. I just gave an example. Onboarding and handovers. So yeah, it's a very wild and a very large system. People move from year to year. There are lots of organizational changes. Staffs come in, staffs come out. Like even my last example is a perfect example. For for a stakeholder to come in, it means the stakeholder was there, but he's no longer there. So there being a vacant position for someone to.
Device is ready to pair.
Okay, Linda's Bluetooth device is ready to pair. That's cool.
Out
You mute
input
that,
mode.
please. And yeah, moving on. So handover and onboarding. So teams might change a lot, especially in the tech industry. Teams change a lot. People move from year to year. I think it's only Nigeria that people don't really change jobs like that, but over there teams change a lot. People can work 2 months, leave. So for you not to have like, and sometimes when a main player leaves, if his work is not properly documented, is it's going to leave a very large gap. So it's always good to have here so that when someone is coming in, he doesn't need to start from the beginning before he knows what he's doing or what he needs to do. So that's why we keep documentation to hand over. So when someone, even if it's the main player that is leaving a team, because here there's a documentation of what all the flows, everything we've done in the system. Someone coming in does not need to wait for like 2 months to get on board. He just goes maybe a week or two, reads through the documentation, and he already knows what the product is all about. So UX documentation is helpful when onboarding new team members and handing over a product off to a new team. The product or company is acquired, UX documentation will help facilitate it faster, smoother assets transfer. Yeah, that's really just it. And you can see why. Now, foster better communication and collaboration. Effective design documentation allows every stakeholder to read about the UX design process and how the product has evolved. Now, truth is, stakeholders are never patient. Even when you are doing your research, they like to see what's happening. They like to know where their funds and where their investment is going. So for those kind of people, UX documentation is what tells them, oh, processes are being done. I would be more confident if I see, or a stakeholder will be more confident if he sees the work that has been done and some of the decisions that have been made and why those decisions are made. And if he comes and say, what are we doing? We're at the research phase. And it might look, it might work the first time, but if it comes the third week or the fourth week and say, what are we doing while the research phase? Then he thinks he's just investing into a lot of chunky money into like pouring water inside the basket and nothing is yielding fruit. But the truth is sometimes timelines might exceed themselves. Even if I set maybe 2 weeks or three for a research phase due to maybe new discoveries or new outcomes, it might stretch. So we need to account for that with documentation. You need to be able to document. Um, then a valuable idea. So good UX documentation is a valuable intellectual property asset describing a product's research and development, which is one of the reasons I really can't show you an example of how I document things. And the second reason is I use an unorthodox style of documenting my own work. So I keep some records on Notion, I keep some on ClickUp, I keep some on my iPad notes, depending on how I do it. And most times when I'm documenting, it's due to the problem I'm solving at the moment that I document those. So that's my own personal documentation. Then sometimes I go to the team's documentation. That's maybe the business BRD or maybe anything they've put along the line. I go through it and I just to get some informations and clarify certain things. So yes, those are a UX documentation is an intellectual asset. So it means it's not something you share and give about or you can put in your case study. If they catch you, they will sue the living daylight because your competitor can just get access to it and build up. So it also helps when you're doing your case study, avoid putting serious informations into that, some informations that might be very, very, threatening. So yeah, but we'll move forward. Then the asset itself can help develop future products and increase the product's value when it comes time to sell. So exactly what we're saying. So at some point in time, if there are some takeovers in the future, sometimes they want to see how this product was bought and how this product came about to life. So the documentation at that point provides a clear roadmap or a clear idea of how everything was being built and stuff like that. I would make mention to let's say Instagram. I think I talked about it in the last class. If you people know how the old Instagram app was, it had a camera. And the problem with that was a lot of people thought it was a camera app and not a social media app where you can post pictures. And so because they had that documentation, they had to like revamp the logo and said you need something that will call this thing like a social media app, which is why your current Instagram logo is looking like the way it is and not just a random camera app. So those are kind of things. If they didn't have this record, they won't be able to like make grow the value of the product and thereabouts. Now, let's talk about what to include in your UX documentation. As usual, you have your introduction. Now, for every UX project, and I'm saying this now because it will help you grow as a UX designer, you must have a project brief. You must have your defined goals and objectives and the vision. So this clarifies what you are building at most times, because if you do not clear these things out, many a times you will have maybe conflict of what the product should be like. So from the get-go, when you are sitting down with your stakeholders, you must be able to address what this project is, what it's supposed to do, and what we hope to achieve with this product. So you have to write that from the get-go, your project goals, your project objectives, your product vision, I'm sure you've done this in the UX design class, so most of these things are not new. Your target users and thereabouts, the information you know so far about the product, what you need to know and all that. So the next thing you can have in your documentation is your user research. Now, like they said, it's an essential part of any research documenting. Includes personas, empathy maps, journey maps, interviews, market research, and any other information that pertains to the customer. UX research is one part of UX documentation where you can afford to include all the information you have to avoid speculation, guesswork, or misinterpretation of results. So yeah, a UX documentation is not meant to be so long. So but when it comes to the research, most or every detail should be put inside so that you know what has been done, what has not been done, and what is yet to be done. That's why it's encouraging you to put that. So for introduction and project view, you don't really need to do you need to just know what the current goal is and the objective. You don't need to know what they were thinking before, because project ideas change over time. They say, oh, before we wanted the app to have a video player, but now no. What do we want the app to have now is what should be your current goal, and that was what should drive your solution. Now, initial concept and sketches. Now, include a summary of your initial concept and sketches can help team understand how the product journey began and the thought process behind the product's features. You can also include sprints and brainstorming session reports to understand how various teams have solved user and design problems. So being that, yeah, you have meetings and sprint times, you can include that. It's not really necessary, but it's always good to put your sketches and your concepts, so you have like different ideas. Oh, this was the idea we had, and this is what we are going with. We use this idea because this did not have this did not have that. Those kind of things is what you put in some of your information. Maybe I can share this one. I can um no, I can't. Or maybe when we go further, let's finish. So information architecture, please. Any questions so far? Note down your questions. I don't know. Let me see if there are any questions. Sorry, I need to know if there I need to know if there are questions. Mm. Okay, I don't think there are any questions so far. It's not showing me that. Uh, all right, no problem. So information architecture, yeah, information architecture is a central piece of UX definition because it gives a bird's eye view of the product, navigation, user flows. You can also include the architecture change log so readers can see how the product has grown and evolved. So yeah, that I think I'm even going to do that very soon on one of the new projects I'm working on. So the former information architecture had like a duplicate of so many things, and we are trying to simplify it. So because of that, we are merging a lot of features. For example, you can come to a page. Okay, so let me give you an example. So initially the app was built and they have two interfaces for their wallets. Now, the first interface of the wallet just has the wallet, no interaction, while the second one has the wallet, fund, withdraw, and the transaction history. Now, I felt this was the duplicate information because in most apps, most behavioral apps, when you check your research, your wallet and your balance, you get it from the home page, and your transaction history is also there. It's only show like a link or it's there as a whole, depending on how you do it. But creating that same feature twice was a problem. Then when we got to the profile page, it was a list of features and there was no organization or this thing. So we told them that no, this is too much. Group some of them, call it profile, group some of them, call it security, group some of them, call it this, so that the journey of the users will not, because when you have too much information on the page, it might affect the visual understanding. You don't need to overwhelm the customers with a lot. So I know their initial goal was they wanted the customer at first glance to see all what the app is having. It doesn't mean you need to throw everything to the customer at the same time. Sometimes you just need a better organization structure would um, would be more preferable. For example, if Twitter said they wanted their users to see the trends and feeds at the same time, our homepage would be a bit messy because you won't even be knowing which one is the trend, which one is the feeds. So that's why they have a trend table. So if you want to know what's happening, go there. If you want to know what your followers and other interests are talking about, it shows on your feeds automatically. So they weighed which one is more important. And that's why the point of Twitter is, get information around. But most of the time is to like keep up with what your followers are doing. So if you're following someone, I mean, what those you're following are doing. So if you're following someone, you really want to know what that person is doing, which is why they throw that on the homepage. But if you want to know what's generally happening around your area, you don't need to be following Bariga to know what is happening in Bariga. Bariga is trending. You can easily check whether something happened in Bariga, whether there was a crash, whether there's a hold up, whether something happened, someone is making a nuisance of himself or something like that. So that's one way to do it. Now, wireframes and mock-ups. Static wireframes and mock-ups allow stakeholders to inspect each screen to understand the product details. Wireframes provide context for a structure and hierarchy of each screen, while mock-ups highlights colors, typography, iconography, branding, and other visual elements. While this is said, I know most of you might have difficulty presenting this sort of visuals for your stakeholders because a lot of Nigerian stakeholders love to see the full design first. They are unable to manage, and this is coming from personal experience. I don't know if that's the same thing you experience. A lot of Nigerian stakeholders can't make a decision when they see the full design. So there are ways to handle that. So what you do is you run sprints for each feature. So you cannot build the entire app completely because you delay your stakeholders, but you can work on a feature. So let's say, let's take one of your applications now. I don't know. I think a team is doing e-commerce and a team is doing a banking mobile app. So now if you were to make a decision with your stakeholders, you say, oh, for the e-commerce people, you can say, okay, let's start with the customer because for e-commerce, there are lots of users. There's the customer, there's the vendor. So you say, okay, now main focus on the customers. So we'll look at what the customer can do on getting into the system. So decisions might be made, meaning that the customer doesn't need to onboard before he can access the system. So that means his dashboard shouldn't really have a login page. The dashboard should have a list of our products, which is what most e-commerce sites do. So until when you want to favorite, bookmark, or buy a product, they now check if you're a user. And if you are not, they just take you to the registration place, like, okay, or login. They take you to login because they are believing you're a user, but there's this, I don't have an account flow that can help you register and onboard. Then they get the record of everything you did before and you just move forward. So when for those kind of things, if you've made a decision that, oh, we want to work on what the user can do on the onboard, you can decide to work on the wireframes and finish that part. So you work on the wireframes, work on the high fidelity, and you tell them, it's okay, this is what they will see when they're on board. Then if they try to bookmark or like a product, this is what they see if they are not a customer. If they are not a registered customer, this is what they see if they are registered customers. And you run through that flow with them. So keep in mind that you might have avoided many other things to do, like maybe the search feature, the add to cart, the profile feature and everything. You just are more focused on how a registered customer and an unregistered customer would see your products and how he can be able to navigate around. So once you have done that, indirectly, one way or the other, you've completed your dashboard main page. By that time, you've completed your onboarding flow. By that time, you've completed your add to cart flow. So that's 3 features already done. And it beats building everything. If you had to build your add to cart, your profile settings, your account settings, your payment settings, your address settings, your this, your that, you're waiting for all that. And like I said, stakeholders are not as patient as you think. So that's the best way to handle for most stakeholders that want to see the complete designs. The best way is actually to use wireframes and mock-ups. The mock-ups is just to give you give the stakeholder a visual understanding of how the product will look eventually. But like I said, it's not enough. They want to see everything together. And but for other people that understand, wireframes would work enough. At least if you have wireframes, they are easier to build. What might take you, please, what might take you a couple of hours or a couple of days might take you weeks, and from there main decisions can be taken and you can move forward with your product. Now prototypes, now you can prototype wireframes. So prototypes allow your stakeholders to see the journey. So explore the product, understand the context behind usability testing and design concepts. It should include the latest iteration rather than every prototype you've created. So this is one area where we don't need to put the history. We talked about concepts, initial designs. You can put the history. Research, you can put the history. Prototypes, you just put what is currently available or what's currently working and how it's behaving at the moment. Now, stakeholders can interact with the prototype like the final products. Team members can inspect properties, size, colors, grade, typography, measure distances, and open the product style guide, which is design system. Now, at first, stakeholders can interact with the product to know what the goal is. But the most important thing is your team members, because when you're building this product, you understand that it's not just you. You are working with managers, you're working with developers, you're working with QA testers. So from your prototypes, even from your designs and mock-ups at that point in time, your developers can know how they are going to build. Your backend can know the APIs or the stuff you will create. Your front end can know certain styles or how the layout will be and what might be involved in writing some of his own APIs. Your product manager can see whether we are really tackling the product goal and vision and everything's aligned. And like I said, your stakeholders can test the products even before the development has commenced. So yes, prototypes are very important to include in your documentation. Now, usability testing reports. Well, the process and results of your testing. Your docs should also outline the company's usability testing process and report so that research teams maintain a high degree of quality and consistency. Now, where this will be very helpful is that in a scenario, let me see if I can think of one where. So now you can have a vision or a product outline. Let me see if I can think of one that happened before. Okay, this is one that happened before. So we built a product when I talked to the stakeholders. I mean, it was a product where we're working on a banking or payment application for corporate people and merchants. So in the initial phase, the PMs insisted that we should work with the web version first, that these people use more laptops than phones. Now, when we built the web version, it still didn't improve usability. We're still getting the same thing. And that was due to the fact that most of these guys were still checking the app on their phone. and there were some responsive issues and interaction. So how did we did it? I conducted a research. I conducted a research where I had to go and see the customer care team and run an interview with them. So the reason being that I wanted to know the exact feeling our target audience are going through. And immediately I got there and asked them, okay, what is the issue? What are the issues you get every day? The girl just laughed and said, they complain that there's no mobile app. And I was told that initially a notice was made to us that most of these people use web platforms and Windows. She said yes, for someone that has an office, you will obviously use the web platform. But the truth is, most of them are merchants. That means merchants that are in maybe one corner of the street, merchants that use their phone most of the time, merchants that really can't really afford a system per se, these merchants, and they prefer phones. So that changed our process, what we were building for. So we took that. So we asked some other questions, and they were also with the fact that we should make the system a bit light, because some of them, even though they are using Androids, their Androids are not always the most latest and the most expensive, and which is true. Much of these merchants that do businesses don't really carry rich phones or thereabouts. So that was another insight we got from this thing, that we have to build it in such a simple way that when developed, the smallest or the lowest Android at that point in time can access it and use it responsibly. So, and that had to do with the fact that we had to conduct different usability tests. And so we brought in a senior person, which obviously didn't have problem doing. But when we brought in a merchant, he was like, he doesn't use laptop, He doesn't, that his laptop is for his boys. That is only life space, he can get his information on the phone. And there was need to do a phone version for him where he can see everything. And he was like, okay, this one works. But he added some few things he would like to see, and we took those as well. And had to test it with 3 other merchants if it was a general concept or it was a personal concept. So yes, usability testing reports will help you know. So like, where this affected, initially the vision was develop web based, because they felt their target audience are more web inclined. But after running some tests, we found out that mobile is as important as the web. So yes, that is where you need to include all that, because if tomorrow one senior stakeholder were to show up and say, why did you build mobile? I thought we agreed. You'll be like, okay, due to some of the tests and research we conducted, this is what we found out. So you can, at that point in time, they can't argue with facts and data. They just have to move along with it. Now, a design system. Yeah, this is very important to have. A design system or style guide outlines the product's design pattern, fonts, colors, components, hierarchy, spacing, and other visual design standard. The style guide will also include guidelines and correct usage to maintain a single source of truth across the entire application. So style guides usually, design system, it helps us, it builds the brand of that product. And excuse me, where it will help some of you in documenting is you document your style guide, at least the team will know that, oh, this is the angle we're going with. Sometimes I think there was a project we were working on before. The style guide was supposed to be green and orange, and we didn't know. We ended up started building the product with the usual sterling brand, which was red and mixture of grays and whites. And when we were done, they were like, no, this is not the style guide for this project. And so we didn't know it was an outsourced project. We thought it was a usual sterling. And when they brought the style guides, we're like, it was confusion at first, but we had to use it because that's their style guide. We added that to the system, and it improved over time. So style guides are very, very important to have in your documentation, so that when a new team comes, they know why and how they are building the product. So yeah, this is the last page of the slide. Now, tips to create great UX information. Give your documentation UX information purpose by determining how it drives decision. UX information UX documentation has a wide variety of end users, including designers, developers, QA specialists. I know I've mentioned this before, stakeholders and management, all who may or may not use a particular document to make informed decisions during work. So yeah, just like the scenarios I've explained before, based on how we're working on a particular project, when you show your wireframes, you show your style guides, everybody in the team can get a view of some of the decisions and why those decisions were made. Now, it also says make your UX administration useful by meeting the requirements of the target audience. Developers don't always have an equal say in page layouts. They usually just follow designs created by the UI and UX designers. Thus, design documentation, however poor it may be, will drive development decisions. In other words, driving decision is one concept, driving good decision is another thing entirely. Documentation with purpose and a target audience is likely to help stimulate good decision making among target users. And this is a fact because design and goal actually drives design. So if you design your product and it's goal oriented, there's a high capability that you will get your decisions right. But if you design by features or design by requests, you might have problem. You might not be able, even if you document them, it might not be the fact that you're meeting your goal. So goals is what drives the thing. If your UX documentation is goal oriented, which is what I'll say right now, there's likelihood that your design documentation will be accurate and will enable other members of the team understand what they're supposed to do. Then improve documentation usability by keeping it focused. Just like I said, no matter how good the documented content is, it's useless if the readers can't understand it. We can distill document usability down to one word, focus. Often user specialists overwhelm UX documentation with too much information. Information overload can cause many problems, especially when the data gets lost in translation. So what is indirectly saying is UX documentation problem, most documentations are very long. I've seen a UX documentation and I got tired reading it. I had to pinpoint what was necessary. So just like it has highlighted, in the initial stage where you have research and concepts, you can ask most of, you can add all the history that involves. But when it comes to prototypes, you don't need to overload them with those things. Your design system, you don't need to show them the previous design system. You might just show them the current design system. So, thereabouts. So, yeah. So, yeah, that's about it about documentation. I'll take questions or thereabout to see. Like I said, I don't think I can share some of the documentations I've worked on in the processes unorthodox, and yeah, they are kind of like intellectual property. So, but I can take questions or maybe extra guidelines on how to handle some of your documentation process. No, documentation is not necessarily the same thing as case study. Now, case study is focused on your design process, your thought process. It's not really, it's you as a designer speaking towards your ability. A UX documentation could involve company information, company assets, company goals. Your UX documentation would not, your case study would not carry that. Your case study will be looking at the problem involved and how you tackle that problem. So one mistake most UX designers also make is they think they need to be involved in a product from A to Z. In order to build a case study, you can build a feature you tackled. Maybe maybe in a banking system, you say, okay, exporting of transaction receipts via transaction histories. That means from your transaction history, you can export receipts. It doesn't mean you will tell them how you built the entire mobile app or to tell them about the company policies and goal and vision. At that point in time, it's looking at the problem you're trying to solve. So you look at what you did to tackle that process. So that in itself is different from a documentation. So a case study is more focused on your design process, while a UX documentation is focused on the idea, the inception from start to finish. The documentation can even have ideas, goals and different things. Even though what we see here is basically some of the things you put in your case study, but it's not how it should be generally. It's not everything that it has to be in your case study. A case study should be more focused on the problem you are trying to solve and the process through which you tackle that problem. So what I will encourage people to do is check some case studies by senior designers and see how they write some of their distance. Sometimes even what the pictures they put is not really clear. Some of them blur it out. But one thing they are more focused on is they just tell you what they did. And that's involves the design process. It's different from telling you how the entire app functions. So let me give another example. For example, I don't think you can find a Twitter case study outside, but I'm sure you've seen lots of case studies that talked about integrating an edit button on Twitter. So that's separate. Integrating an edit button on Twitter is due to you just see the reasons why you want to do it, what you want to do about it, and how you feel it's possible design-wise. But to just wake up in the morning and find a complete document that tells you how Twitter came to life, you will never find that. So it's not the same. All right, any more questions? So one thing I would like to add is when building out your case studies, is more of storytelling. That's another difference I'll ask than documenting. Documenting is facts, figures, research, actual, insights. Case studies is more of story. So truth is, there comes a time where you improve your case study presentation phase, but it's more like telling a story. Okay, I got to this place, this is what I found, then we decided to do this and do that. It's like telling a story. It's different from when I come and tell you what the entire company is all about. That's more like how will I call that what kind of word will I use? A stand-up meeting. So when someone comes and does a stand-up meeting or you're having a meeting, you see that they are more concerned about, the facts and figures, what they've accomplished over a period of time. You see that one, they are more focused. But when someone comes and tell you a story, maybe how he invented this feature. Okay, let me say NIBS now. NIBS handle transactions for Nigerian banks. Someone can come and tell you how NIBS were able to get this transaction figure, but nobody will come and tell you exactly how NIBS did it. The structure, everything that involves NIBS in running the transaction. That's one in the first circle that every transaction must go through them, whether it's coming from Paystack, whether it's coming from a bank or thereabouts. So that's another difference between a documentation and a case study. So is that clear, Ayomide? Do you understand the difference? All right. Okay, that's good. So we can take more. Okay, so yeah, like I said, I don't know if I could. I'm sure everything that has been presented, you've worked on it. You by now you know how to write briefs and project goals. So I'm sure you've had various ways of conducting your research. You know how to come up with sketches. You know how to come with your IA. So there's really nothing to show. You know how to come up with your wireframes and mock-ups. You know how to come up with your prototypes, usability test reports, design system. Now, remember when we said your research and your initial sketches, you have the initial style. In your case study, if you're going to put that, it's not the initial style, it's probably the solution your research was able to come out you really work with. So that's another little slight difference. Then usability testing, you're doing with that design system. Nelson, I'm trying to understand this your question. It says, so in that case, is the brief Kemi sent the documentation for both projects? So most of what you saw was an overview, for the app. I think the banking app, what you got was a BRD, a business requirement. Now that's separate from documentation. You can take some of the information there. Okay, I don't know why color Paul. Okay. That's very much. So in most cases, what you got for the app was a functional requirement. Most times they call it FRD, some call it business requirements. Now, that is not a UX documentation. That is an idea. It's like more of an overview of what you're supposed to do. But you can take some key things from there and put in your UX documentation, especially one that you find might work or might not work. So those are not documents. Might be documents to other people, but it's not a UX document to you. The first one that had to do with e-commerce, that's a project brief. It's simply a project brief, what they hope to accomplish, what they hope to achieve. At the same time, when you read that brief, it's you that will define the goals, what's achievable, what's not achievable, and you'll bring that. There's not much difference. A lot of people use functional requirements, so it's more about the organization. So a functional requirement is mostly focused on features. That's one thing I've noticed from the difference. A product requirement is slightly more different. It's more focused on maybe the product, the target audience. For example, a functional requirement might have, we want our people to onboard, we want them to register, we want them to do transfer, we want them to pay bills, we want them to do. A product requirement can be, we want to target a younger audience of people. We want to target the Gen Z. We want the Gen Z to open banking applications. We want the Gen Zs to be able to request for loans, and it will not be as as stressful or prolonged like most flows. So at that point in time, you are looking at different scenarios. So one is focused on features, one is focused on goals. But yeah, they all have their requirements, but it may differ. So that's one way to look at it. And back to like I said, you even mentioned it, the former question, is the brief. They are briefs. They are not documentation, but some of those informations in that brief can be put into the documentation that you can call on and say, oh, according to this area, this is what was made. So yeah, and we mentioned, let me come here. Sorry. What is going on here? I know we mentioned part of the things that could involve introduction of brief can have the project goals, product, and vision. In that same scenario, when you have those product goals and vision, part of it might be gotten from the brief that has been sent to you. So you need to highlight those areas. You need to know this is what we want to achieve. This one, so that in case they are bringing up things that might change the project goals, you can call them to order and be like, oh, no, you actually said we should do this and do that. So we won't be able to do this and do that. And I think that's at 5 it goes. Then any more questions? I can't see any so far. So yeah, that's pretty much it when it comes to UX documentation. I hope this style, this flow, I'll share this. Let me just share it now. So it can serve as a flow to help you know what and what should be when you're coming up with your documentation and reasons why you need to document. And I think that's about it for me on this end. I'm taking questions for now. So if there are no more questions, I feel you pretty much understand what a UX documentation can work. Um, well, you have to discuss that with management, Nelson. So reach out to me. I think I'm on the Slack channel, but I barely check it. Apologies for that. I've been really busy. And if that's the case, I don't know how many requests I'll be getting. So because I remember someone putting his wireframes for me to check. And the truth is the wireframes are actually very good, but I couldn't reach back to the person to talk about those wireframes. The wireframes were good, but I think one thing they should drop is the gradient. Wireframes don't need to have gradient or also special effects. Let it just be in grayscale. So you have to talk to management on that reaching out part. So I don't know how, but if they can find a way, yeah, sure, you can reach out to me. So discuss our management and we'll look at that. Yeah, any more questions? I think everyone pretty much understands this UX documentation because it's not something that is out of the ordinary, like what you've not done before so far. I think you're already at the concluding stage of your um, learning and your project as well. So right now, I think there's no information that is here that you don't know about, but there might be little things here and there you might need to clear out. So maybe you may not have questions now. You probably have questions later. You can send to management to forward them to me. I will send an answer and forward back to you. So I think that way we could actually have some issues. I mean, we should actually have some solutions, not issues. So yeah, pretty much it. So thank you guys. I think there are no more questions so far. I believe everyone understood the class handling different stakeholders and thereabout. So I talked about stakeholders. There are various types. The person, it can be who is in charge of the project. It could be your target audience. They come in various types. So you need to know how to manage their feedbacks. And their feedbacks can be gotten in different ways. It might be like an outburst on social media, just like we have some of them that happen on Twitter and Instagram. It might be through a mail. It might be through your prototypes. You just know how to communicate it. So whenever you're having like a disagreement between you and your stakeholder, always remember to apply usability testing to know which one works better. Let your results speak for you so that you don't get confused, and always ask them. So there's another issue that happens in I think most UX, they feel the UX designer knows it all. You're not a magician. You're to use insights to know what you're doing. So sometimes they can say this project is not hitting our mark and stuff. You have to be able to request for data and you have to be able to conduct research. So I think one person reached out to me. She said they want a different dashboard. And the first thing I asked was, when she came to me and said the problem is that they said they don't like the conventional dashboard. And the first thing I asked her was, are there generally dashboards have a style and a look? So is there a reason why they want to change the dashboard look and feel? Maybe then maybe it's not a dashboard they are looking for. And I told her to ask them certain questions like, who are you building it for? Why do you want the dashboard to change? Some questions like that. And the truth is, they could not provide an answer. The reason was then was they felt if it's different, it will draw more customers. And that was totally based on assumption. It wasn't a fact, it wasn't a theory. You didn't go to ask your target audience whether this is what they want. So I thought that if that's the case, let them do a research, call in 3 people, maybe 3 of their target audience, have an interview session with them, probably give them a dashboard to use, whether they have a problem, whether the complexity is too much for it or something simpler. Know the reason why you want your dashboard to be different as to just making assumptions and going with it. And whenever, if you do that and you find out your users are not using the dashboard, you will still blame the UX designer and say, you didn't do it well enough. Think outside the box. Meanwhile, maybe the solution was just to do what everybody is used to. So yeah, those are things that might come up when handling stakeholders. Handling stakeholders can be very, very stressful and sometimes messy, but that's the reason for UX documentation. These allow the stakeholders to be more focused. Sometimes when there's no documentation, stakeholders can just invent ideas because they feel something should be happening, something different should occur, something should change. They just get that feeling overnight. It can be through a dream, it can be through a sleep. It might be gisting with one of their fellow stakeholders. They just get that scenario that no, this app, these designers are sleeping too much. Let's put them to work. Sometimes it might be the fact that there might not be much to do at that point in time. They just want to put you to work and your pay or something. And this can easily happen when you don't have a proper documentation to outline all the work that has been done to this very point. So when you have that, if you had the proper documentation and said, oh, sir, I like what you're bringing, but would that not affect the decision we made year and year and year and year? At that point in time, you are showing your knowledge. It shows that you know this product. You understand this product. At that point in time, you'll be very cautious of just inventing random ideas to put you to work. So these are just certain things I've known via observation and via experience. So for some of you that might be working, if you have issues communicating with your stakeholders, you can share some of those problems here, and we could look at how to tackle them probably in the next 5 to 10 minutes. And for those of you that feel there might be issues that might come up between understanding and communicating with not just your stakeholders, your tech team, your dev team, your PMs, and your QA testers, you could let me know on the chat box so that we could really just talk about them and really analyze them. I'll give it maybe 2-3 minutes tops, then I round up for the day. A template. Wow. Hmm. Uh, a template. I'm coming. I'll need to stop sharing, see if I can see a template. So like I said, I don't know if there exists. Stop. Okay, let me see if I can just browse through a template, see whether I can come up with something. Oh, yeah. Yeah, let me see if I can come up with something. Hmm. All right. Okay, let me see. Let me see what this file has. Okay. Yeah, so I'll share you a Figma link. I have seen one with a community. Yeah, this will serve as a template. This is pretty much good. Could have done this. Let me go. Where's the chat? Okay, here you are. So I sent you a Figma link. Hope good enough. A Figma community has worked on the templates for a UX documentation, and yeah. So don't worry. It's not different from what you've done before. You like if you see the document, you see that it's exactly or the same thing we've talked about initially. Everything we've have highlighted. But yeah, this pretty much works as a good documentation template. And in some cases, it might look like a case study, but it's not. It will contain more. Okay, I see most people are already on it. So yeah, pretty much that's that. So I think with the template, you can see the template is not different from what you've done. It's not different from what we discussed and thereabouts. So I think in the absence of more questions and thereabout, I think we can call it a day. I think there are no more. I mean, you have what you need, you have a guide, you have a template. You pretty much can. There's nothing that we are putting in that template or guide that you haven't done before in your journey as a UX designer. So I think you're pretty much good to go. All right. So in the absence of many questions, I'll just tell you guys that it's good to see that what we've started is really coming to an end and yielding a lot of fruits. I'm happy for the progress you've all made in getting this far in your journey. For those of you that have understood everything that has been taught so far, congrats. For those of you that haven't understood everything and it's still a bit dicey, don't be disappointed. It's like that most of the time. Even I had to do some learning and relearning in becoming a UX designer we are today. So it's not a crime to not know what you are doing now, but you should know why you are doing it. So a lot of people I've seen struggle with their design process because they don't know why they are doing it. All of them just shout research, research. And I ask you, why are you researching? What are you researching for? That's because most of the time when you guys start your UX design, you don't outline your goals properly. So in a nutshell, I'll give you four main informations that will help you in your design process that would, guide you, because there's a lot of talk about you guys being beginners and not understanding what you need to do. So let's just have a small interaction. So when you have a UX project, always understand that you need to know the goal and the vision of that project. You need to understand why you're building this project and what needs to be done about the project. You need to know the business connections to that project. What the business hopes to achieve is what will guide the kind of users that will use that project. A lot of people say they want to build a project for everybody. There's really no such thing. There are always target users. At the same time, there are evolved users, which we call proto personas. So, Instagram started out as an app that was to share pictures and other things. Now it has turned to an influential page or a TV right about now. So that's the room for proto personas. They looked beyond the target audience and looked at the ability and what it can achieve. So it's still not designing for all. It's still just expanding the horizon of your target audience. So that's what you need to do. So understanding, we call it discovery and definition. You need to understand what your product is all about. And that's when you begin to know what you need to do. Now, when you understand your product, you have what you call assumptions. You have informations, which are clearly assumptions because you don't know if they are true or not. Now, the thing about those assumptions is that you have to test them. You have to do a research. That is why we do research. Research is not just invented overnight. We have information of what our target users are. we have what we hope to achieve in this project. We have some of the user outcomes, but we need to clarify that what we believe is there is actually what it is, which is why you go into research. And that's why research most times involves interaction with these people you are trying to build for. You do interviews, you run online surveys, you call them in to know how they interact in certain behaviors, you observe them. That's why we do research, to clarify what we know. So without a project scope, brief, goal, target users, there's really no point for research. So that's what we do. Now, when we have our research simply is just to confirm what we assumed. What we assume with what we have. So we've assumed certain things. But when we do that research, it's either it confirms what you're doing or it gives you a new insight. And maybe you need to research more on that insight. So that's why sometimes research can extend beyond the due date, because you and your stakeholders might have sat down and defined everything. But when you go out in the market and do a little bit of research, find out that, oh, it's quite different. And that's why you take back to your stakeholders that, oh, I know we said we're supposed to do this and this, but due to our research, we found this and this. So let's see maybe why this is so and understand the market. That's the point of research. Well, like I said, when you find out that, okay, this research, you've met all the requirements and what you need to do, all the insights, you have everything you need, that's where you go into design. Now, design has different ways. There are some designs that require you to build user flows. There are some designs that require you to build experience maps. There are some designs that just require you to sketch. And there are some designs that require you to just do wireframes. Now, it's not a must, you must do all of them. You just need to look at the problem you're trying to solve and build them respectively. For example, I remember when I was working with my team, I have a team that I work with. I told them to build a payment platform to handle foreign cross-platform payments. And when we got to building for payment and receiving cash, we had to build a flow so that we understand what the user is seeing, expectations and all that. But when we got to handling customer service, whereby we need to do QA and FAQs, we needed emails, we needed a chat box. We've just sketched an interface. So we sketched an interface in such a way that all you need to do, you could get everything, because why they wanted to build flows, I told them you don't need flows. We did a sketch whereby we had a floating button on the home page. Immediately you log in, it tells you who he is, that, hi, I'm here to assist you. Now, if you were to tap on the floating button, it opens a chat. Inside that chat, you can get our contact information via phone and email, and you can still get a link that sends you to the FAQs. There's really no flow you can draw for that. But at that point in time, a sketch was all we needed. And when we shared these sketches with the developers and everything, they knew all the APIs, all the things they needed to call to get that feature ready. But because the payment flow might require us to check source accounts, check beneficiary accounts, choose currency, all those kind of technical import beneficiary, all those things. So there was need for a flow, but we didn't need that for building a. So that's why we have different design strategies, and it's for you to look at the problem you're solving and which one will work for you best. And then you run into design. Now, when you design, yes, you've done your design, but you have to test whether this design validates the research insights you got. That's why we test designs, to know that what we assume was right is right. And maybe if we missed out something, we can go. So that's why I said design is not like an iteration process. Based on your test, you can check whether is the design phase that needs to be adjusted, or there's not enough information, we need to go back to the research phase, or there's need to address the goals. So it's based on your test, you know which area you have to go back and lean on to get more clarity and information. So these are like 4 stages, but they pretty much cover everything you will do in a UX design process and why you need to do them. So I hope they are clear to you guys. And those are the things that will influence what you put on your documentation or thereabouts. So no confusions. I don't expect you to get it straight away. Take your time in understanding these processes and everything that comes with it. And I'm pretty much sure you'll be fine and you would you will exceed. Now, one more thing I would like to say is I know we've mentioned not sharing some UX documentation based on the fact that intellectual property and stuff like that. But what I would like to add is have the ability to write very well. Sometimes what separates you from your dream job is inability to write or document properly. Your case study can tell, a recruiter can tell from your case study whether you are good at documenting. He doesn't need to see your full documentation. He just needs to see how you write your case study. So there's need to know how to write. One of the skills that is easily ignored in the current market is most UX designers are focused too much on visuals. You think it's the visuals that will attract. If it's visuals, they can get a graphic designers for that. No offense to graphic designers though. But one thing they look at is not just your design process, your ability to tell a story. That involves your ability to write. Is a skill that separates most designers today. Inability to write properly or document properly can hinder your growth. I've seen someone that they don't have a portfolio, but is working for a US company just because she documented her case study in a very neat and orderly manner. That's all. When I told her, send me your portfolio, her portfolio, I looked at it and I was like, wow, there's nothing much here. She doesn't really have an official portfolio. She literally just documented the flows on Notion. And a US company still found it fit to hire her because what I could see there was organization, clarity. She defined her goals properly. She didn't just say, I built a banking app. She wrote the problem she was trying to solve and she worked on them accordingly. And they could see her tackle it step by step. So that's another thing that needs to work out. When you're building out your code study, be more focused on the goal, what you're trying to solve, and make sure your processes outlines it properly. If you just go and start writing, I built a Web3 application what is your Web3 application doing per se? Is it curing cancer or what is it doing? So you need to be more defined. I see a lot of people just say, I just designed this. I'm like, okay, if it's the visuals, fine. You can design something to be aesthetically pleasing. That's fine. That means you're working on the visuals. But once it's like a case study, a problem, you need to define it properly. It's the problem and how you present the problem and the solution is what attracts recruiters. When they say that, okay, this guy can spot out issues and all that. I'm a UX designer today, and most of the times, what I need to do is just be able to spot out issues, things that may not communicate with our target audience. I barely design these days because there are people to do that. So you need to define what you want to do in time and how you want to do it. So yeah, I feel that's it for the day. I think we've had a very good session. I hope everyone was able to gain something. I hope you all understand and gain something. If you have any further question, reach out to management. They'll forward it to me. I'll give you my reply. In the absence of so many questions, in the absence of any questions, we'll call it a day. Congrats, guys. You guys are really doing a good job so far. I respect you all for the step you've taken, Linda. And like I said to the last team, there's really there's space for designers. I know it looks as if there's no space. There's no space because a lot of designers are roaming around the same plane. It's like when you are searching for, I don't know if you've seen when they put fishes. If you notice, the smaller fish, they just throw them in one area and they keep breathing for air. But the big fish, they take them to a separate place. So the small fish, you think there's no space here. Meanwhile, the big fishes are like, man, this place is chilling. So it's time to upgrade to that level. And that's some of the steps you guys have taken to know what is done professionally. So there's space for designers. Don't allow anybody to deceive you that everybody's a product designer, this one and that. Or it's a skill that is heavily required. It's a skill that is going to expand, which is why they are talking about 3D designs and all about all these things. There's room for growth. Right now, when UX design started, it was more about UI and UX. People were doing both together. Now it has evolved to the point we are now separating skills. It's not as if we're separating it because we're just separating it so that work can be concluded faster. That's why you say, oh, now we need UX writers, we need UX researchers, we need UX designers, we need UI designers, we need visual designers. There's need to separate this thing. Even in product management, they are separating them. Before, the Scrum Master is the PM, but now there's Scrum Master, there's PM. There's PM for each feature. So these are some of the things you need to understand that goes around. That should tell you enough that there's space for everybody. There's just the need for you to upgrade, improve yourself, and get better. So I really appreciate those that participated today. Linda, Gold, Kolapo, Adekule, everybody, Aureolua, Samson, Rex, Zainab. I can't really call everybody. Ify, Ademola. I really appreciate you guys. Ebon, Eniola, you guys did so much work. Badmos, Kindele, and the rest of you. Do have a lovely day and enjoy the Easter. Okay?